For decades, the story followed Lee Marvin everywhere. That he had stormed the beaches of Iwo Jima. That he had earned the Navy Cross, the second highest award for valor the nation can give. It was the kind of legend that made a Hollywood tough guy seem even tougher. There was just one problem. Most of it was not true. And the real story, the one confirmed by his actual military record, is somehow more brutal, more painful, and more honest than the myth ever was. Let's get into it. Lamont Waltman Marvin Jr. was born on February 19, 1924, in New York City, into a family with astonishing lineage. He was a direct descendant related to Confederate General Robert E. Lee, whom he was named after, and a distant cousin of George Washington himself. But bloodlines meant nothing to the young Lee Marvin. He was, by every account, a wild and rebellious kid, thrown out of several schools for misbehavior. He was the kind of boy who seemed destined for trouble. And then, in August 1942, at 18 years old, with the world at war, Lee Marvin left school and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. He did not wait to be drafted. He walked in and volunteered for the toughest branch there was. Here is what actually happened next, and it is a record that needs no exaggeration. Marvin was assigned to Company I, 3rd Battalion, 24th Marine Regiment, 4th Marine Division, and shipped to the Pacific Theater. He trained and served as a scout sniper, one of the most dangerous jobs a Marine could hold, moving ahead of the lines to observe the enemy and strike from concealment. It was a role that demanded nerve, patience, and a willingness to operate alone in the deadliest space on the battlefield. And over the course of his service, Marvin participated in the brutal island-hopping campaign that defined the Pacific War. By some accounts, he took part in more than 20 separate assaults on Japanese-held islands, including the vicious fighting at Kwajalein and Eniwetok. This was not a man on the sidelines. This was a young Marine in the very worst of it, again and again, on island after island, in a theater of war known for some of the most savage close-quarters combat in human history. The 4th Marine Division would earn a reputation as one of the most heavily engaged divisions in the entire Pacific, and Lee Marvin was in its ranks for some of its hardest fighting. And then came Saipan. On June 18, 1944, during the assault on Mount Tapachau in the Battle of Saipan, Lee Marvin's war came to a violent end. His unit came under withering Japanese machine gun fire while advancing on the high ground. Marvin was hit, and the wound was catastrophic. A machine gun round struck him and severed his sciatic nerve, the largest nerve in the human body. As he lay wounded and exposed, a Japanese sniper shot him again, this time in the foot. Most of his company was cut down in that same engagement, a slaughter that left the unit shattered. Marvin survived, but barely, and the injury would haunt him physically for the rest of his life, leaving him with lasting pain and limited use of his leg. This is the truth of Lee Marvin's war. Not a heroic charge up Mount Suribachi on Iwo Jima, but a scout sniper cut to pieces on the slopes of Saipan, 8 months before Iwo Jima was even invaded. The aftermath was long and grueling. Lee Marvin spent the next 13 months in and out of naval hospitals, recovering from wounds that never fully healed. And here is a detail the legend always left out, one that makes the real man far more interesting than the myth. Marvin had actually risen to the rank of corporal during his service, but he was demoted for causing trouble, and was ultimately medically discharged in 1945 with the rank of private first class. He did not leave the Marines as a decorated hero draped in the nation's highest honors. He left as a busted-down PFC with a shattered nerve, a purple heart, and a body that would ache for the rest of his days. That is the truth, and it is a harder, more human truth than any tale of storming Iwo Jima. So where did the myth come from? For years, a story circulated, often in a chain email that spread across the early internet, claiming that Lee Marvin appeared on The Tonight Show and told Johnny Carson that he had landed at Iwo Jima, earned the Navy Cross, and been severely wounded there, and that the bravest man he ever served with was none other than Bob Keeshan, the actor who became television's beloved Captain Kangaroo. It was a beautiful story. It was the perfect blend of celebrity, heroism, and wholesome surprise, and it traveled the world for years, forwarded from inbox to inbox, repeated in speeches, and accepted as gospel by countless people who had no reason to doubt it. It was also almost entirely false. Snopes, the US, Marine Corps History Division, and multiple biographers have all confirmed the facts. Lee Marvin was never at Iwo Jima. He never received the Navy Cross. Bob Keeshan, Captain Kangaroo, was indeed a Marine, but he enlisted too late to see any combat in World War II, and the two men never served together. The Marine Corps History Division even keeps Marvin's casualty card on file, documenting exactly where and when he was truly wounded. The heartwarming legend was a fabrication that attached itself to a real veteran's name, and no matter how many times it was debunked, it kept coming back. But here is the part that matters, and here is why the truth is so much better than the myth. Lee Marvin did not need the lie. His real service was extraordinary. He genuinely enlisted at 18. He genuinely served as a scout sniper in the 4th Marine Division. He genuinely fought across the Pacific through some of the war's worst battles. He was genuinely, grievously wounded at Saipan, his sciatic nerve severed by machine gun fire. And he genuinely earned the Purple Heart, along with the Presidential Unit Citation, the Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, the Combat Action Ribbon, and the other decorations of a Marine who was truly in the fight. The myth gave him Iwo Jima and a Navy Cross he never had. The truth gave him something the myth could not: the credibility of a man who had actually bled for his country and never needed to inflate a single detail. What Marvin carried home from that war shaped everything that came after. He returned to the United States and, while working as a plumber's apprentice, was asked to fill in for an actor who had fallen ill during a rehearsal at a community theater in upstate New York. It was pure accident. He was reportedly repairing a toilet at the theater when the opportunity fell into his lap. But something clicked. The wounded Marine had found his calling. And when Lee Marvin began his acting career, the war went with him. He brought a hardness, a realism, and a barely contained danger to the screen that no acting class could teach, because he had lived it. His prematurely white hair and deep, gravel-bottomed voice made him instantly recognizable, and directors quickly learned there was no one better at playing men who had seen terrible things. He played soldiers, killers, gunfighters, and hard men, and audiences believed every second of it. In 1967, he starred as Major John Reisman in The Dirty Dozen, drawing directly on his own military experience, though he privately disliked the film and its glorified version of war. That same era, he won the Academy Award for Best Actor for his dual role in the comedy Cat Ballou, proving he was far more than a one-note tough guy. He became one of the definitive leading men of his generation, a star who had earned his gravitas the hardest way imaginable. But the war never truly left him. Those who knew Marvin spoke of a man who carried the weight of what he had seen, who drank to quiet it, and who rarely bragged about his service, even as a fictional version of it spread across the country in his name. The demotion, the wound, the 13 months in hospitals, the friends he watched die on Saipan. Those were the things he actually lived, and they were not the stuff of tidy chain emails. They were the stuff of a real and difficult life. Lee Marvin died on August 29, 1987, in Tucson, Arizona, at the age of 63. And in the honor that finally set the record straight for anyone paying attention, he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery, laid to rest with full military honors among the nation's most respected service members. Not for a Navy Cross he never won, not for an Iwo Jima landing that never happened, but for exactly what he was: a genuine combat-wounded Marine who gave his body to the Pacific War and never fully got it back. Charles Bronson, his friend and fellow veteran, was among those who paid tribute. So when people ask about the rumors surrounding Lee Marvin's war service, the answer is layered, and it is important. The famous story, the Iwo Jima landing and the Navy Cross, was a myth, and it was never true. But the real story, the scout sniper, the 20-plus assaults, the severed nerve on Saipan, the Purple Heart, the 13 months in hospital, and the demotion that made him more human than any legend, that story is completely true, and it is the one that deserves to be remembered. Lee Marvin was a real Marine who suffered real wounds in a real war, and the truth of what he endured was always more powerful than the fiction that tried to improve on it. If you enjoyed this story, take a moment to subscribe for more true stories of the legends whose real lives were even more remarkable than the myths that grew around them.